Joining us this morning, Titania Jordan.
Tatiana Jordan. Did I get the name right? Jordan?
Titania.
Titania. Okay. All right.
It's Titania Jordan.
Welcome to Connect, everybody. We have an amazing guest on the line, Dan Sullivan, a man whose teachings have greatly impacted my life, my business, and thousands of others. So welcome to the show, Dan.
Titania, I'm really happy to be here and talking to you.
So you're credited, this is funny, this is a quote from Don, as being the leading leader on leadership training. I just thought that was hilarious and eloquent and poignant at the same time. How did you become such a leader that has impacted people from all over the globe?
That's the first time anyone's called me that, so I'd have to ponder the context for it. But, you know, ever since I was a kid growing up, I'm a farm boy from Ohio, born in the 1940s. But ever since I was a kid, I've had this ability to kind of identify what other people do really well and separate it very quickly in their minds from a lot of stuff that they really don't do any better than anyone else. And so through a series of questions, which have, you know, over the years turned into thinking processes, I really identify where people are at their best. And what this does, it gives them an enormous amount of confidence because there's a lot of activities that, and I'm talking about anybody here, you know, family members, you know, friends and everything else. I've always had this ability to listen to what people are saying, and I'm usually picking up the emotional content of how they talk about things, and I can see where emotionally they talk with a great deal of confidence and where they don't. And you can kind of visually, in my mind, I see it almost as a big circle is everything they're doing, and then there's a small circle where they're always very confident and they always produce really great results. And they always get better in that small circle area. So my whole life is about people going from their big circle to their small circle. And there's a lot of steps you have to go through. And, you know, it was 25 years before it ever occurred to me that I could make a living that way. And then I had to go through all of the normal steps that anyone does when they're creating a new business in the marketplace. So I had, you know, a lot of failure. I had a lot of very lean paydays, and but around the end of the 1980s, I had really created a curriculum, if you will. We have sort of a school, so this is the curriculum, and it's taken off, and it, you know, I got into the marketplace at the right time. A lot of more entrepreneurs, and very early in my coaching days, which actually started in 1974, and I was a one-on-one coach, I began to realize that the only people I really wanted to deal with were people like Don and all the other entrepreneurs who come to the strategic coach. Mm-hmm. And so I just focus on the person who owns the company.
Right.
And who is a leader anyway, whether they act like a leader or not. They're a leader. They're seen by their, you know, their team members and their staff as a leader. And the whole thing is to always be operating from their small circle and delegate everything else that they're doing, all those other activities that are in the bigger circle. And that, you know, it's that simple. I mean, it's very simple to understand, but it requires a lot of work on their part. There's a lot of negotiation they have to do with other people to make the leadership role constant and make it constantly positive and make it inspiring and then constantly growing.
So you have a tremendous ability to understand entrepreneurs' unique situations and then come in and offer strategies that create breakthroughs. Can you comment on some of the biggest breakthroughs you've seen in your tenured history?
Yeah, well, I have a tremendous number of, I've coached 6,000 individuals, so you have to understand that the breakthroughs are the breakthroughs that they want to make. I'm not the one who identifies what the growth path is, but I do help them identify what the measurable indicator would be. So someone comes into Strategic Coach, and we have 3 levels. We have a first level, which is called the Signature Program, and then a second level, which is called 10 Times the Ambition. And then I'm just introducing a brand new program, which is called the Game Changer. So 3 levels. And when individuals come in, they've made a fundamental decision in their life that they've gone about as far as they're going to go, just using their own thinking about things. And 2 things that they're looking for. One is sort of a guided path where they can receive coaching from someone else. And that wouldn't be just me, it would be the other entrepreneurs that they're in the coach program with. So the first thing is my guidance, but the second thing is the guidance that they get from a community of other individuals who are talented, are successful, and they're ambitious. And so it's a fundamental decision. Am I going to be a rugged individualist for the rest of my life, or am I going to be part of a coaching community? And this can last, really for the rest of their lifetime, because I have 40 entrepreneurs right now who have been in the program more than 25 years. And
Wow.
They just consider that every quarter, one day they're going to come from all over the world, and they're going to be in a room with entrepreneurs from every different kind of industry, but they all have this common goal that they want to jump to the next level.
I bet the energy in that room is insane.
Of their, in terms of their business results, but it also takes in their personal life. They want to, develop and expand the enjoyment they get out of their personal life. So that's really the starting point, and we do it on a quarterly basis. And in the 10 Times program, we say what we want you to do is have a 25-year framework, not a 1-year framework or a 2 or 3 year framework. We'd like you to have a 25-year framework so that you can continually grow within a structure where you can measure your progress over many years, but you only have to really think about activity in terms of what's going to happen during the next 90 days, because at the end of 90 days, you're going to be able to come back to your community. You're going to be able to talk about your progress. You're going to get input from the other entrepreneurs. And I'm going to, as the coach, and I'm one of 16 coaches in Strategic Coach. So I've trained 15 other coaches who have their communities. And so they get a fresh start every 90 days, and that's really important. But not only that, they get to recognize their progress, they get validated and encouraged and applauded for the progress they're making. And then if they have particular issues, they have a whole day in just the perfect community for them where they can bring up issues, and they get enormous amount of solutions from the other entrepreneurs in the room.
Dan, I have a question, because our audience is made up of not only CEOs and entrepreneurs and leaders, but a wide variety of people, and a certain subset of them would really benefit from a concrete example. So you say the problem is never the problem. The problem is that you don't even know how to think about the problem. Okay, that is going to blow people's minds. And can you give us a concrete example of how to start thinking that way?
Yeah, well, I could use anybody for this. For example, Titania, I could use yourself. that you've, from what Don, has told me about you, and I knew about you because Don was raving about you at one of the recent workshops that he was in. So I knew who this person was, but hadn't met you. But it sounds to me like you've really identified your small circle inside the big circle. But if you're in business, there's what you're really good at, but what you're really good at isn't everything that your company has to be good at.
Right.
Okay. And so I'm really good at what I'm doing right now. I'm good at communicating. For the most part, I'm a front stage person. You know, you do not want me involved in the backstage of the running of the company. I don't have really good management skills. I'm not a manager of other people. I'm a coach of a certain kind of person. So in order for Strategic Coach to grow, I had to have a partner just to start off my organization. And I met her 35 years ago, 2 days ago.
Wow,
and
congrats.
And her name's Bab Smith, and she's a marvelous creator of teams. She knows how to create teams around any particular activity in the company. And she's not a conventional manager. She's not, a supervisory type of manager, but she gets her team leaders very clear, and we have very specific, measurable goals in the company every year, money related, market share related, and profit, especially profits. So Babs has identified people who have the different skills, and she, has identified leaders in each of these areas, and then she shows them how to create teams around that. And see, I don't have any of those skills. And so, but the big thing is for Dan to know where the line is. I'm speaking about myself here, where the line is between what I'm really great at and then where other people's abilities are really great. And so that would be true of anybody on the planet. That's, people who aren't entrepreneurs, let's say people who work in corporations, people who work in government, people who work in nonprofit areas. There's always the same model that you have a big circle of all the activities you do, but the small circle is where you're really great, and your real success in life is to bring your time and your activity inside the small circle, but then have really good delegation processes where you can attract other people who have really great skills. They're just as good in their area of expertise, what we call unique ability, as you are in yours, and then it becomes unique ability teamwork. And that's one of the big, I would say that's probably the single biggest breakthrough concept that we have in Strategic Coach, is that you have your unique ability, other people have their unique abilities. They don't do your activity, you don't do their activity, but you create a teamwork that's all geared to goals that would produce bigger and better collective results. Again, it's a simple idea, but it requires very committed negotiation. It requires planning. It requires creating processes that all these other activities require, so that it becomes recurring success. And so literally I've created a kind of a development system for individuals that would be true of all 7 billion people on the planet, but I really only deal with a particular type of person. But my clients deal with all the other people in all the other different areas of life, and they become coaches to the people in their life. Don would be a coach. I'm quite sure, just knowing Don and talking to Don, I could tell that he has probably really good coaching skills.
Absolutely.
But it's only useful if Don knows where his small circle is, and then he knows all the other skills that have to fill out the rest of the circle.
Yes, the unique ability concept is so liberating and game-changing, really. It allows you to scale like no other.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think there's a natural desire for all people to scale in some way or fashion. You know, I think you get a tremendous sense of growth, and not only that, I think it makes people very happy when they can focus on just what they do uniquely well and then team up with other people. I think there's kind of a formula for personal and marketplace happiness involved in that procedure.
Absolutely, and liberation as well.
Liberation,
yep.
Yeah, freedom. I mean, we call it freedom.
Yes.
Freedom. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know that we want more freedom. You know, we want more freedom of our time. We want more freedom to make more money that's consistent with our growth. We want more freedom of who we get to work with. You know, both inside an organization or in your personal life, your business life, and then also freedom of purpose. You know, that every individual, if you can show them how they can get freedom of time, money, and relationship, they develop a very powerful purpose which encompasses their whole life.
Yes, I don't normally take notes during an interview, but I can't not take notes during this one. This is awesome. Dan, a lot of people say hindsight's 20/20. And I would want to know if you could go back and speak to yourself before strategic coach, what would you tell Dan Sullivan 50 years ago?
50 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was telling Dan Sullivan things 50 years ago. And, you know, I'm 73 now, but I'm a lifetime journalist. You know, I mean, I have a personal journal, and it dates back to 18, so that's 55 years. So I don't know if your other guests are going to be as ready to answer this question as I am, but I can guarantee you I can answer the question.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and my desire at 18 was to create an entirely different kind of educational system on the planet. Okay, so, you know, I mean, I was thinking of the whole planet, but it was based on making maximum use out of your experience. So the main teacher that I believe that everybody has in their life, if they get the right mindset about this, and they also develop really great skills for working with other people, they want their actual experience that they've lived to constantly provide them with great insights, that is the actual teacher. So I'm a great believer that the best people on the planet are the best self-teachers. And they use other teaching. It's not that they ignore other teachers, but they use the teachers from outside of them as secondary to the primary teaching that they're learning from their own experience. And that makes people, I think it makes them, you know, free. Obviously, they become free. But the other thing is that I think that there's no end to their growth then, you know, for the rest of their life. And so I think as long as you're learning and you're using your experience for self-teaching and testing it out, you know, I mean, you have to test these things against actual forward experience. So you take your past experience and you develop them into lessons, and then you keep testing these lessons against the moving, you know, what I call the moving future. And that makes them, I think it keeps them young. Doesn't matter what their age is. They have a very, very young attitude towards life. And I certainly feel younger at 73 than I was at 23, if you go back 50 years, because I've mastered self-teaching 1,000 times greater, maybe 1,000,000 times greater than when I was 23, because I was still strongly influenced by other teachers. I think the breakthrough came for me where I was willing to take my self-teaching and wrap a company around it and go out into the marketplace, because then I'm testing against the marketplace. Everything that I learned about self-teaching, then would other people pay me to show show them the structures and processes of self-teaching. And that's really, I've never said this before in any interview, and I've never written about this. This is the first time I've actually expressed this, but anyone who spends any time with me learns how to be a self-teacher.
It's key. It's key. And I would love for you to meet my 94-year-old grandmother one day, because she is sharp as a tack, and that is her whole ethos, right? Is be a lifelong learner. She's young as can be because of that. Yeah, yeah. And I've met 90-year-olds who are younger than 20-year-olds. Yep, yep. It's fun to see my grandma on Facebook. She's a charm. Dan, you have been around so many people, so many successful people, and you also have endured great success. So on that note, how do you gauge success? Yeah, well, I endured the lack of success. I've actually enjoyed the success. Right? And, you know, that's a funny interchange, actually. Yeah, yeah. You know, it's, people say, you know, learning is really hard. I said, no, actually learning's really easy. It's the not learning that's really hard. Oh, preach. Yeah, I mean, I've been bankrupt twice, and this was testing my ideas against the marketplace. And I was a little bit too early for the entrepreneurial marketplace, because I started coaching in 1974. And I gotten a thought in 1973, and I can remember the catalyst that gave me the confidence to actually go and, you know, I was a copywriter with BBDO, a big international ad agency. You know, it's worldwide. It's one of the 5 biggest advertising companies in the world. And so, but I read an article in the New York Times, 1973, and it was talking about this new invention called the microchip. And it was just about that time that they were using the term microchip. And up until then, they had talked about integrated circuits. Gordon Moore, who coined the, you know, the law which really runs the technological world, which is Moore's law, which means that microchips about every 18 months to 2 years will double in power, and the cost of the computing power will go in half. And that's, you know, that's the exponential law. And he just observed how the microchip had developed from 3 data points over a period of about 5 or 6 years. And he said, this is the most interesting invention, because it seems to be an invention that grows itself. You can take microchips and apply them to microchips, and you can create more powerful microchips. But not only that, these microchips can be applied to almost every other kind of activity, those that already exist, and in some cases new activity. And the writer said this is the most profound, innovative breakthrough in the history of the world. And he gave a projection, you know, of more or less what was coming, and that large organizations would find life increasingly more difficult because the microchip introduces a factor of speed and convenience into every activity in the marketplace, and a lot of hierarchical organizations where people just do one thing, they wouldn't be open to learning how to use the microchip in their work. And a lot of these large organizations will collapse because new entrepreneurial ventures will come into the marketplace. And, you know, it was just a few years afterwards that Microsoft and Apple got started, and then, you know, the thousands, hundreds of thousands of other kind of smaller organizations, which were much more entrepreneurial, would you know, outdistance them. They would undermine their success. And I began thinking about that in terms of my self-teaching and the fact that I was good at helping other people doing this. And I said, you know, I think I can do this for entrepreneurs out in the marketplace. But, you know, I had the 2 qualities that are absolutely necessary to become an entrepreneur. One of them is total confidence, and the other one is complete ignorance.
No, I mean that if you can't be too knowledgeable about what you're getting into, because it would scare you too much and you wouldn't do it. So you got to have a period where your confidence overwhelms your knowledge and really overwhelms your capabilities, and then you jump into the deep end of the pool, and then you find out the first thing is just to keep your head above water. And I had a rough, very, very rough first 8 years. I had a lot, interestingly enough, I must have been under a tremendous amount of stress, because I had 4 orthopedic operations where I broke something, Achilles tendons, cartilage tear, and everything. And all I can think is that I was undergoing an enormous amount of stress, and it was coming out physically. And then I went through a divorce during that period of time. And I look back, I just call it extreme market research,
Right.
bankruptcies and the divorce. I can look back with a sense of humor now. I wasn't experiencing humor when I was going through it.
Well,
and one of the things I came to is I needed a methodology. I couldn't just be going out there and living by my wits. I'm good at asking questions. The other skill I have, in addition to seeing where people are really good, is I have a tremendous ability to ask people questions which are open-ended questions where they have the answer, but they don't know that they have the answer until someone asks them a question about it. And a lot of strategic coach is really based on open-ended questions. What are you really passionate about? Well, I don't know the answer to that. The other person has that, but until it's put in a question form, they can't really think about something that they already know. And they don't really know it until they answer the question. So a lot of what coaching is just answering these questions, which the asker doesn't know what the answer is, but the question has an enormous impact. And again, a lot of people want to tell other people things. They want to give people answers, and I've stayed away from giving answers, but instead giving people questions which really allow them to examine their own thinking. Just going to take a glass of water here because I'm going a bit dry.
No problem.
All right.
Wonderful. Well, Dan, that's a beautiful space to play in. I can imagine it's extremely rewarding, and therein lies the magic, is uncovering the questions you might not have the answers to, but you help people find, leading them to high impact careers and life achievements.
Yeah.
I want to
and the other thing I should stress is that we don't see a separation between people's business life or their occupational life and their personal life. We recognize it's a whole person, and you're constantly moving back and forth between your personal and your money-making life. And the less separation there is between those two things, the more positive energy people have, and they have a sense of integration with their lives. So one of the huge breakthroughs that happens to everybody who really commits themselves to answering these questions is that their personal life just transforms. Their marriages get better, their relationship with their family gets better, the relationship with all their extended relationships in their personal life get better too.
Dan, I can't thank you enough for your time, for the wisdom that you have put into writing, and I look forward to hopefully meeting you one day very soon.
Okay, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
From your notes, what's the biggest thing you learned from this conversation?
Let's see. Honestly, the thing that we last talked about, which is, I think a lot of people try to separate work and their life. But as you so eloquently stated, when those can kind of live in symbiosis, you can actually become better at home with your spouse, with your children, because you are fulfilling your unique ability, you're thriving, and I'm going to be going home and talking to my husband about that actually this afternoon, about kind of rethinking what makes him come alive, because I have found it, and I think I'm a much better mom and wife and friend because of that. So again, I just can't thank you enough.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate it, and I appreciated your interest, and I appreciated your questions.
Wonderful. Well, take good care of yourself, and hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you, Titania.
Okay, bye-bye, Dan.